Hey everybody, Brian Good here, and Merry Christmas to you. Got Nemo with me. Say hi, Nemo. Say hi. You will see him coming up on the 11 o'clock news at some point. Depending on how well he behaves, will determine at which point you actually will see him, so stay tuned for that. And no, I am not Pee Wee Herman today, by the way. Someone called me that on Facebook. Promise you that was not my intent, but I can see why you would say that. Anyway, let's talk about our setup here for the rain first off and the wild temperature swings, and then we'll get into the changes that are coming down the road. On Snow Talk on the stats there, notice we are behind to date now, 2.1 inches of snow trace is all we've got on the board. As far as what we're monitoring, I don't see anything in the next 14 days that I can put on the board. I really don't. Not enough to even get me to a confidence level of a 1. So because of that, the board will remain 0. But it's not all bad news, and I'll explain in a second. First off, here's the setup. We've got the same cold front that came through here with all that nasty weather and thunderstorms. It has stalled across the southeast, becoming a warm front. See these showers right here in Arkansas moving northbound? It's a sign it's now becoming a warm front and is on its way to Louisville. Now, it's running behind. It should have already begun to make that transition, about 10 hours ago, and it did not. So because of that, it's running behind schedule. That will affect tomorrow somewhat, and I'll explain on Futurecast in a moment. But we have a series of low pressures moving through, the Rockies diving down, that are playing havoc with the boundaries that we do have in the Ohio Valley. At times, it'll force a boundary up to the north, and then it'll bring it back down to the south. Then it'll bring it back to the north. Then it'll bring it back to the south. And each time it goes back and forth, we get a wave of rainfall with it, and it affects temperatures. If you're south of it, you stay warm. If you're north of it, you stay cool. And everybody will see a little bit of everything the way it's looking as we head down the road. Now, when it comes to severe weather, not a huge setup for severe weather in our area. Marginal risk, we've had a few warnings down to the south across the Arklatex area into Alabama. Tomorrow, ahead of that new low that is developing, again, it's going to be right ahead of the low where your best chance would be for severe weather, and that's why it's a marginal risk. And now that it's a warm front, you've got to add in some thunder, maybe some gusty winds as it passes through our area, but I don't see severe weather being a big issue even for us. And then the storm, again, slowly worked its way out on Monday, on to Sunday, into southern areas of Texas. And again, I think the severe threat overall with this system is probably going to be to our south, not so much here locally. So, let's talk about this warm front. Again, look at all the flood warnings we've had. We had flood warnings all the way into southern Kentucky. A lot of you saw flooding today. You woke up on Christmas morning with your rivers in your backyards at their bank level, if not higher. So we've had a few river flood warnings that have been issued, especially for the Green River. So use a lot of caution there because more rain is coming in your direction, guys. So let's map it out. We've got a few areas of drizzle that we do have right now across the area. I saw some raindrops on my car during my break, so yeah, there is some drizzle out there, and temperature's not too bad. They should hold steady, actually, where they are now, until the warm front comes through. So let's get to the warm front part. I've put on the wind arrows telling you a northeast wind, a cooling wind, and here are the temperatures and, of course, the future radar. All right, here we go. Tomorrow morning. Now, when I was doing the 6 o'clock news, we already had heavier rain and thunderstorms already in this area by 11 a.m. They're still down into Nashville at this point, so the front is, once again, taking its sweet time, accelerating northbound. But we get at least a modest warm-up at 11 a.m. tomorrow even. Temperatures pretty much where they are now. But then that changes. As the warm front begins to work its way north, I know for a lot of you that are heading east on 64, heading toward Lexington for the Battle of the Bluegrass, by the time you get out, we are still expecting it to be warmer than what it is when you arrive. And in some cases, significantly warmer. But watch out for heavy rain, some lightning and thunder with this, some gusty winds. Again, we're in the marginal risk for severe weather. We'll watch it carefully. And then as it really heads northbound, the warm front, it is going to be warmer at 11:30 at night than it will at any other point throughout the entire day on Saturday. In fact, look at the 70s showing up. The record high in Louisville, by the way, is 70. Very well could reach that before midnight. And then we stay warm 4 a.m. Look at all the 70s still across our area. That's wow, that's a good amount of warm air being pumped in from the north. But then the front, the same front that came through here that is now north of us, becomes a cold front. Reverses track, heads back southbound, and we'll see that happen on Sunday. And it'll drop our temperatures again back into the 50s. And then the 70 there 72 in Somerset. Say goodbye to that by the time we head into later on Sunday evening. It's going to be a cool Sunday evening overall. And then we get into a wild setup here as we head into Monday, where the warm front, again, it was a cold front that came through Sunday, becomes a warm front again. It tries to come back north. I hope you're paying attention to all this. I know Nemo is. He's taking notes. By the time the warm front comes back north again Monday, it doesn't make it all the way back to where it was, but it gets close. And look at the difference in temperature here. We've got 40s in Seymour, and we've got 70s to our south in Lebanon and Campbellsville. Huge gradient is going to set up here. Now, right now, I have our high of about 55 on Monday. But I got to tell you, it's a huge bust potential for Monday's forecast because if the warm air is able to get all the way up to Salem and Carrollton. If the front can get that far north, then Louisville very well could hit 70 degrees. And that line right there, by the way, would be strong thunderstorms, maybe even severe, potentially. It will all depend on how much that warm air can go north. And right now the models they're fluctuating all over the place on that idea. So stay tuned for more updates on Monday on how this will end. And this will be the last of it. Maybe some showers at the backside, and we're done. The other issue we got to worry about, not just the chance for severe weather and temperatures, but the rainfall. Look at the projected rain totals between now and Monday. You see the problem here. Forecast amounts in E-Town of 5 inches of rain is tremendous, while Somerset barely a half inch. And see this band here? This is off our scale, the band that's behind the banner for northern counties. 5 to 6 inches, maybe 7 inches of rain potentially, because you guys get so much of that front motion that's going back and forth. Majority of the time, the fronts keep stalling over that area, so that's why the rain totals are so much higher. While the fronts themselves spend less time in this area of Kentucky, so the rain totals are lower. It makes sense to me. But because the front spends more time to our north, the Weather Service has already posted a flash flood watch for northern counties all the way through Monday at 7 p.m. Now, if we get more data that suggests the front may stall out more often across southern Indiana, then Louisville will issue a flash flood watch further to the south. It will all depend on how many times does this boundary stall in one particular area will determine the watch placement, so kind of a heads up on that. Then after that, we get to finally a cold pattern that you guys that are snow lovers have been waiting to see happen. Here's the Euro. I'm showing only the very cold core of air, and then here's the radar. Now, the future radar does not determine rain or snow on this. It just says precipitation. That's why it's all green or yellow. It's about an intensity more than anything. It's an interesting setup here on the 30th. Man, we're close. We got a wave that goes up the East Coast. We saw this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Ended up going 2 hours south and east and missed us. The core of the cold, though, back here to the west, they don't exactly match up, but man, it's close. If it ends up being closer, I'll put it on the board. But right now, not close enough. And then in the core of the cold air, it takes over New Year's Day and the day after. Does it go away? Not necessarily. It just kind of becomes a very interesting ridging that takes place here across Canada, and we get these troughs now that are going to dig down across. We call these the east-based troughs, the east-based NAOs, that is referred to in meteorological terms, is likely to set up across the eastern seaboard. So not exactly a great pattern for snow for us. Eventually, I think that will be replaced again with a temporary ridge. I don't think it's going to stay cold for very long, but we're going to be cold more often than warm than what we used to be. So that's why I think it's going to be an evolving pattern. All right. I'll get more into that tomorrow in the winter update. Here is WPC, their hand-drawn map for the 30th, and they are putting a band of snow in southeast Kentucky in the Appalachians, but not here. So posted this earlier. You guys love this. The Euro EPL, we went for it to go negative, and there's been several model runs now taking it negative, and of course we've seen that on the model data. The PNA, oh by the way, the EPO is going negative on the GFS too. On both models, PNA is going positive. It's a good sign to get cold air in the east. NAO trying to go negative, but again it has more of an eastern bias, the NAO, which would explain the eastern trough over the New York City more so than over the Ohio Valley. And then the Arctic Oscillation is trending toward neutral, if not negative, but not off the chain, but enough to give us some happiness. Here are the Euro numbers. I'm sorry, the GFS ensemble numbers showing the dip, highs only 30s in time for the new year, and there's a slight rebound after that. Here's the experimental European model. Here are the highs at the top, lows at the bottom. It's showing maybe a couple of days here where we may not get above freezing potentially by the time we get into the first couple of days of of January. And here is the MJO forecast. All you need to know is what phase it goes in the future. Here's now, and the future begins in the yellow, and it's taking us to phase 8, 7 and 8. What is in phase 8 this time of year? Well, if you go to 7, you get some cold air shots, but if you go to phase 8, you get cold over the east. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We'll have much more on the pattern tomorrow night.